Captain Hyun-woo stood on the observation deck of the Perseverance, watching the lights of New Seosan colony spread across the valley below. 15 years ago, this planet had been empty rock and ice. Now it was home to 340,000 human souls. Children played in parks built with their own hands. Families grew food in greenhouses that stretched for miles. It was beautiful. "Captain, you should see this." The voice belonged to Dr. Ga, his chief medical officer and oldest friend. She pointed at a data screen showing sensor readings from the outer system. Hyun-woo frowned. "What am I looking at?" "Unknown contacts. Dozens of them. They appeared out of nowhere like they jumped from dark space." That was impossible. Dark space was the void between galaxies where nothing lived and nothing traveled. The Galactic Council had explored it centuries ago and found only emptiness. "Send a greeting message. Standard protocols," Hyun-woo ordered. Lieutenant Dae-jung, young and eager at the tactical station, nodded and transmitted the message. They waited. 1 minute passed, then 5, then 10. "No response, sir," Dae-jung said. The unknown ships moved closer. Their design was strange, organic-looking, with curves and ridges like bones. Hyun-woo had never seen anything like them in all his years of service. "Try again. All frequencies," he said. More silence. The ships crossed into the system's inner boundary. Alarms began to sound across the bridge. "Captain, they're powering weapons." Dae-jung's voice cracked slightly. "Energy signatures are massive. I've never seen readings this high." Hyun-woo's chest tightened. "Raise shields. Send an emergency broadcast to all Council species in range. We need help." The first shots came without warning. Beams of purple energy lanced down from orbit, striking the northern continent. Entire city blocks vanished in explosions of light and fire. The observation deck shook as the colony's defense grid activated, but it was designed to stop pirates and small raiders, not a full military fleet. "How many ships?" Hyun-woo demanded. 217, sir, and they're only targeting our settlements. The mining stations run by the Telkin Corporation haven't been touched." Ga pulled up casualty reports, her face going pale. "We've lost contact with the northern cities. That's 60,000 people, Hyun-woo, gone in the first strike." Hyun-woo grabbed the communications console. "This is Captain Hyun-woo of New Seosan to all council members. We are under attack by unknown hostiles, requesting immediate military assistance under emergency protocols." The response came from Ambassador Su-min on Pinnacle Station, thousands of light years away. Her face appeared on screen, looking worried but helpless. "Hyun-woo, the Council is in emergency session. They identified your attackers. They're called the Vekrin. They disappeared into dark space 800 years ago. Everyone thought they were extinct. I don't care what they're called. We need ships. We need weapons. We need help now." Su-min's expression told him everything before she spoke. "The Treaty of Silent Worlds forbids it. No species can call for military aid from their home world. The Council species nearby are refusing to intervene." "I'm sorry." The connection cut off as another volley of weapons fire rained down on the planet. Hyun-woo watched through the view screen as the Eastern District's shield generators overloaded and failed. Fires spread through residential areas. People were dying down there, his people, and the galaxy's laws said he couldn't save them. "Sir, we're launching everything we have," Dae-jung reported. 12 defense platforms, 8 patrol ships, and the cargo haulers are being armed with whatever we can strap to them. It wouldn't be enough. Hyun-woo knew that. Everyone on the bridge knew that. Gia worked frantically at her station. "I'm analyzing their targeting patterns. Hyun-woo, this is deliberate. They're hitting population centers, schools, hospitals. They're not trying to conquer us. They want to kill us all." "Why?" he asked, though he didn't expect an answer. "I don't know. But they're ignoring every other species' installations. Only humans. Only us. The next 6 hours were hell. The small human fleet fought desperately against overwhelming numbers. 3 patrol ships were destroyed. 5 cargo haulers, crewed by volunteers who knew they wouldn't survive, rammed Vecran vessels in suicide attacks. It barely slowed them down. Hyun-woo coordinated the evacuation of the southern continent, loading civilians into transport ships and sending them to the underground mining tunnels. GA set up emergency medical stations in the caves, treating injuries by flashlight when the power failed. By nightfall, 120,000 people were dead. The colony's infrastructure was collapsing, and no help was coming. Hyun-woo sat alone in his ready room, staring at a black console built into the wall. It had been installed when the Perseverance was commissioned, with strict orders never to use it. The quantum relay could send a message across the galaxy instantly, directly to Earth. But doing so would reveal Earth's location to everyone monitoring the transmission. And under the Treaty of Silent Worlds, calling home was punishable by execution. He thought about the children he'd seen playing in the parks that morning. He thought about the families who'd built lives here, who'd trusted him to keep them safe. He thought about Gia working in blood-soaked tunnels, trying to save people with no supplies and no hope. Then he thought about Earth. Beautiful, dangerous, stubborn Earth, hidden away like a shameful secret because humanity had the audacity to care about its own. The galaxy's laws said he should die quietly, follow the rules, let his people be slaughtered rather than break the silence. Hyun-woo powered on the console. His hands shook as he entered the activation codes. The screen glowed blue, showing a direct line to Earth Defense Command. He began typing. "This is Captain Hyun-woo, New Seosan Colony. We are under attack. Massive casualties. No council aid coming. Transmitting coordinates. Please help us. Tell my family I'm sorry." His finger hovered over the send button. Once he pressed it, he was a dead man. The council would hunt him across the galaxy if he survived this. Outside his window, another explosion lit up the night sky. Hyun-woo pressed send. Admiral Young-soo was drinking coffee in his office on Luna Base when the impossible happened. The quantum relay, silent for 83 years, suddenly activated with an emergency code. He nearly dropped his cup. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from deep space," his communications officer said, her voice shaking. "It's from New Seosan Colony. They're under attack." Young-soo ran to the command center, still in his casual uniform. The message played on the main screen. He watched Captain Hyun-woo's face, saw the fear and determination there, and felt his blood turn cold. An attack on a human colony, massive casualties, no help coming. "Get me the Unified Earth Council immediately," Young-soo ordered, "and start preparing the home fleet for launch." "Sir, if we launch, everyone will know where Earth is," his second-in-command warned. "I know. Do it anyway." 6,000 light-years away, on New Seosan, the situation grew worse. Lieutenant Dae-jung organized the remaining defense forces for what he knew would be a final stand. They had converted every ship they could find into makeshift warships. Mining vessels carried nuclear charges. Passenger shuttles had been fitted with salvaged weapons. Even the civilian cargo haulers were being loaded with explosives. 200 volunteers, sir, Dae-jung reported to Hyun-woo. "They know what they're signing up for." Hyun-woo wanted to refuse, to find another way, but there wasn't one. Tell them humanity won't forget." The volunteer fleet launched at dawn, heading straight for the largest Vecran cruiser in orbit. The enemy ships opened fire, destroying the small human vessels one by one, but the volunteers didn't retreat. They didn't hesitate. They flew directly into the enemy formation, ramming and detonating their ships in close proximity. When it was over, the Vecran heavy cruiser was crippled and drifting. 197 humans were dead. 3 had survived the explosions and were picked up by rescue teams, badly injured but alive. Dae-jung watched from the command center, tears streaming down his face. He'd sent those people to die. It had worked, but the cost was unbearable. Underground, Dr. Jia worked without stopping. The mining tunnels had become a nightmare of wounded and dying. She'd run out of proper medical supplies hours ago and was using industrial sealant to close wounds, mining equipment to create makeshift splints, even welding tools to cauterize when nothing else worked. A girl, maybe 12 years old, was brought in on a stretcher. Her name was Mira. She'd been trapped in rubble for 8 hours before rescue teams found her. Both her legs were broken, and she'd lost a lot of blood. "Stay with me, Mira," Jia said, working quickly. "You're going to be okay." "My parents," the girl whispered. "I can't find my parents." Jia didn't answer. She'd learned early in the crisis that most people looking for family members wouldn't find them. The casualty lists were too long, and many bodies would never be recovered. On Pinnacle Station, Ambassador Su-min sat in a council detention cell. They'd arrested her within minutes of Hyun-woo's transmission, accusing her of conspiracy to violate the treaty. Through the walls, she could hear the council members arguing. A guard who she'd befriended over the years whispered through the door. "They're debating what to do about Earth's fleet. Some want to stop them. Others are saying humanity deserves a chance." "What do you think?" Su-min asked. The guard, a member of the peaceful Hinari species, was quiet for a moment. "I think your people are either very brave or very stupid, maybe both, but I hope they make it in time." That night, the guard left her cell door unlocked and walked away. Su-min escaped into the station's maintenance corridors, heading for the communication arrays. On Earth, the debate raged in the council chambers. The president stood before hundreds of representatives from every nation, every continent, every ideology. "If we launch this fleet, Earth's location becomes known to every species in the galaxy," the president said. "We could face invasion, we could face economic sanctions, we could face isolation." Admiral Young-soo stepped forward. "With respect, Madam President, we could also save 300,000 human lives. Isn't that what we're here for? To protect our people?" A representative from the Pacific Federation stood. "The treaty exists for a reason. Breaking it could start a war." "A war has already started," Young-soo shot back. "Our people are dying right now while we debate. Every minute we wait, more of them die." The vote was close, 52% in favor of launching, 48 against, but it was enough. The Earth fleet consisted of 200 warships, the largest military force humanity had ever assembled in one place. They carried experimental weapons, technologies that had never been tested in real combat, and 30,000 Marines ready for ground assault. Admiral Young-soo stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, watching his fleet form up around him. He thought about the risks, about what might happen when the galaxy learned where humanity lived. Then he thought about those 300,000 people fighting for survival with mining equipment and courage. "All ships prepare to jump," he ordered. "Destination, New Seosan. We're going to show these Vecran what happens when you hurt humans." The fleet vanished into warp space, leaving Earth exposed and vulnerable behind them. Back on New Seosan, Hyun-woo received a coded message from Earth Defense Command. Help was coming. 34 hours away. 34 hours. They had to survive for 34 more hours. He gathered what remained of his command staff. Dae-jung, exhausted and grief-stricken. Jia, covered in blood that wasn't hers. A dozen other officers who'd been working non-stop since the attack began. "Earth is coming," he told them, "but we need to buy them time. Every ship, every weapon, every person who can fight. We hold the line for 34 hours. Dae-jung straightened up. "We can do that, sir." "It's going to cost us," Hyun-woo warned. "Everything worth doing costs us," Jia said quietly. "Let's make sure the price means something." The Vecren attacked again at midnight, a full orbital bombardment designed to break the human resistance completely. But the humans had spent the day preparing. They'd rigged the entire colony with traps, turned every building into a potential weapon, and positioned their remaining forces to maximize damage. When the Vecren ground troops landed, they found humans waiting for them. Not soldiers, most of them. Just ordinary people with whatever weapons they could find, defending their homes because no one else would. The fighting was brutal and close, hand to hand in some places, but the humans didn't break. They couldn't afford to. 34 hours until Earth arrived. 34 hours to prove that humanity wouldn't die quietly. The Earth fleet emerged from warp space directly into hell. Vecren ships swarmed around New Seosin like insects around a dying animal. The planet's surface glowed with fires that could be seen from orbit, but the colony still fought. Admiral Young-Soo could see human defense platforms firing their last shots, see the desperate maneuvers of converted cargo ships trying to protect evacuation transports. "All ships, weapons free," Young-Soo commanded. "Show them what Earth sends for its children." The human warships opened fire with everything they had, railguns that could punch through a mountain, nuclear missiles that burned like small suns, experimental pulse weapons that disrupted enemy shields. The Vecren had never fought humans before, had never encountered their particular brand of controlled chaos. A Vecren battlecruiser exploded as 3 human destroyers concentrated fire on its reactor core. Another enemy ship found itself surrounded by a minefield that hadn't existed seconds before, the humans having launched thousands of small drones that clung to its hull and detonated simultaneously. On the ground, General Bo-Ra led the Marine Expeditionary Force in drop pods that screamed through the atmosphere like meteors. They landed in the middle of a Vecren ground force that had been advancing on the last human stronghold. "Marines, on me!" Bo-Ra shouted, her powered armor already firing. "Let's remind these things why Earth is still standing after 4 billion years." The Marines moved like a precision instrument of violence. They'd trained for years in Earth's harshest environments, had studied every alien combat doctrine available, and had one advantage the Vecren hadn't anticipated. They were absolutely furious. Every Marine had watched the casualty reports from New Seosin, had seen the images of destroyed hospitals and burning schools. They fought with a cold, professional rage that made the Vecren hesitate, something the ancient species had never done before. In the underground tunnels, Dr. Ajia heard the sound of human dropships overhead and felt hope for the first time in 2 days. Then the ground shook as Marines began clearing the surface above them. "They're here," she told the wounded around her. "Earth is here." Young Mira, the 12-year-old girl with broken legs, started crying. "I told you," she whispered. "I told you Earth wouldn't leave us." A Marine in full combat armor appeared at the tunnel entrance, his weapons sweeping for threats. When he saw the civilians, he lowered it and activated his external speakers. "Medical evac is on the way. You're safe now." The word safe made GA laugh and cry at the same time. She couldn't remember what safe felt like. In orbit, the battle raged on. The Vecren had numbers, but humans had fury and innovation. When a Vecren ship tried to ram a human cruiser, the human captain simply accelerated toward it, fired his forward weapons at point-blank range, and used emergency thrusters to dodge at the last second. The Vecren ship, unable to course-correct, flew past and was destroyed by the rest of the human formation. Admiral Young-Soo coordinated the attack from the Indomitable's bridge. "Target their command ships. Cut the head off this snake." Then his sensors officer called out a warning. "Admiral, we have new contacts. 20 Council warships just arrived in system. They're hailing us." The face that appeared on screen belonged to Inquisitor Cal Seth, a member of the Council's Enforcement Division. His species looked like walking crystals, and his voice had no warmth in it. "Admiral Young-Soo of Earth, You have violated the Treaty of Silent Worlds. You must surrender Captain Hyunwoo immediately for execution, and your fleet must withdraw." Young-soo stared at the alien with open contempt. "You want me to stop saving human lives so you can execute the man who called for help? Are you insane? The law is clear. Revealing a homeworld's location is punishable by death. Then you'll have to kill all of us because we're not leaving until every Vecran ship is debris." On the surface, Engineer Tae-hyun had spent the last day turning the colony's infrastructure into weapons. Mining lasers that cut through rock now carved through Vecran armor. Fusion reactors meant for power generation were rigged to overload near enemy positions. Even the water distribution system had been weaponized, flooding Vecran tunnels and freezing them in the planet's cold night. "They wanted to destroy our home," Tae-hyun muttered as he activated another trap. "Let's show them what happens when you break a human's things." A Vecran squad tried to take the main power station. They found it had been turned into a fortress with automated defenses that Tae-hyun had programmed personally. The aliens made it 3 meters inside before concentrated laser fire cut them down. Lieutenant Dae-jung, exhausted but still fighting, led a team to rescue civilians trapped in the Eastern District. They found 200 people hiding in a school basement, protected by 3 teachers who'd armed themselves with whatever they could find. "Earth came," one of the teachers said, tears running down her face. "We heard them on the radio. Earth came for us." "We always would have," Dae-jung replied. "Now, let's get you somewhere safe." As they evacuated, a Vecran gunship spotted them and opened fire. Dae-jung's team returned fire, but they were outgunned. Then a human fighter screamed down from orbit, missiles already launching. The Vecran gunship exploded, and the fighter pilot's voice came over the radio. "Ground team, this is Eagle 3. You're clear. Get those people home." Back on Pinnacle Station, Ambassador Su-min had reached the communication arrays. She'd been sending encrypted messages to sympathetic council members, sharing footage of the Vecran attack, images of destroyed hospitals, videos of human civilians defending their children with mining tools, evidence that the council's laws had allowed a genocide to begin. The response shocked her. Dozens of species, moved by humanity's desperate courage, began sending unofficial support. Medical supplies appeared in New Seosan's orbit with no identification. Ammunition and power cells materialized on the surface with anonymous notes. Even warships from 3 different species quietly joined the human fleet, claiming they were just passing through. Inquisitor Cal Seth watched this all happen and realized he'd lost control of the situation. The Council's authority was crumbling in real time, undermined by humans who refused to die quietly and aliens who couldn't ignore their conscience. He sent one final message to Admiral Young-soo. "This isn't over. The Council will respond to this defiance." Young-soo's reply was broadcast on every frequency, meant for the whole galaxy to hear. "Good. Let them come. Earth is done hiding. We're done watching our people die while bureaucrats debate. If the Council has a problem with that, they know where to find us now." In the tunnels, Captain Hyunwoo listened to the Admiral's words and smiled despite everything. He'd broken the most sacred law in the galaxy. He'd called for Earth, and Earth had answered. It had cost him everything. His career was over. His life was likely forfeit. But above him, human ships drove the Vecran back. Around him, his people were being saved. "Sir," a young officer said, "they're saying you'll be executed for what you did." Hyunwoo looked at Mira, the young girl with broken legs who was smiling for the first time in days. He looked at Jia, saving lives with borrowed equipment. He looked at the faces of people who'd survived because he'd broken the rules. "Then I'll die knowing I did the right thing," he said. The Galactic Council chamber had never been this full. Representatives from every member species crowded the massive hall, all shouting at once. High Chancellor Morvex, a being so old that nobody remembered his original species anymore, sat at the center and watched humanity tear apart 8 centuries of careful law. "They must be punished," shouted a reptilian delegate. "The Treaty of Silent Worlds exists for everyone's protection." Ambassador Su Min, who'd escaped custody and snuck into the chamber, stood and raised her voice above the chaos. "Protection? You let 300,000 humans get slaughtered and call it protection?" "The law is the law," another delegate argued. "Then your laws are broken," Su Min shot back. "We followed them. We stayed quiet. We hid our homeworld like you demanded. And when our people were dying, every single one of you turned away. So Captain Hyunwoo did what any decent person would do. He called for help." High Chancellor Morvex raised one ancient hand, and silence fell. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. "The treaty was created after the First HFY War. That conflict killed 70 billion beings across 200 worlds. We created the treaty to prevent such wars from spreading, to contain them." "By letting isolated colonies die?" Su Min asked quietly. "Yes," Morvex said, and his honesty was terrible. "Better a colony than a civilization. Better thousands than billions." 6,000 light-years away, Captain Yunji commanded Earth's stealth reconnaissance ship, the Silent Observer. She'd been tracking the HFY fleet movements, trying to understand their strategy. What she found made her blood run cold. "Command, this is Silent Observer," she transmitted urgently. "I've located the main HFY fleet. It's not just attacking New Seosan. That was a staging ground. I'm reading over 10,000 HFY ships massing near the core worlds. They're planning a full invasion." Admiral Young-Soo received the message and immediately forwarded it to every council species. The response was chaos. Panic spread through the galaxy as species realized the HFY weren't just targeting humans. They were targeting everyone. And they'd used New Seosan to test council resolve. They'd found it wanting. On New Seosan's surface, a man named Jae-won led a resistance group through the colony's underground networks. Before the attack, he'd been a simple farmer. Now he was a guerrilla fighter, using his knowledge of the mining tunnels to ambush HFY supply lines. His team was 12 people, mostly civilians who'd grabbed weapons from dead Marines. They moved through the darkness, setting charges and disappearing before the enemy could respond. "Next shipment comes through in 10 minutes, Jae-won whispered to his team. "We blow the tunnel, trap them underground, then collapse Section 7 on top of them." "That's 300 meters of tunnel," one of his fighters said. "It'll take weeks to dig out." "Good. Every minute they spend digging is a minute they're not killing our people." The ambush worked perfectly. The HFY supply convoy was buried under tons of rock and ice. Jae-won's team escaped through a maintenance shaft, already planning their next strike. Above them, the battle in orbit continued. Human ships fought with a creativity that baffled the HFY. When conventional weapons failed, humans rammed their ships into enemy vessels. When shields held, humans deployed boarding parties that used explosives to breach hulls from the inside. Lieutenant Dae-jung watched from the Surface Command Center, coordinating ground forces with the orbital fleet. He'd barely slept in 3 days, running on stimulants and determination. "Sir, we have a problem," an officer reported. "The HFY are concentrating their forces on the western continent. If they break through there, they'll have a clear path to our main refugee centers." Dae-jung looked at the map. The western defenses were already weak, damaged by days of fighting. They didn't have the forces to stop a concentrated push. "I'll go," he said quietly. "Sir, load the damaged ships with every explosive we have. I'll pilot them into the HFY formation. It's the only way to break their advance." His officers stared at him. "That's a suicide mission." "I know." Dae-jung smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Make sure someone tells my mother I died protecting people. She'll like that." Before anyone could argue, he left the command center and headed for the docking bay. 3 damaged ships were waiting, their hulls barely holding together. Dae-jung chose the least broken one and began the flight sequence. As he lifted off, Dr. Jia's voice came over the radio. "Dae-jung, don't do this. We'll find another way." "There is no other way," he replied. "Tell Hyunwoo he was right to call Earth. Tell everyone that fighting for each other is always worth it." The three ships accelerated toward the Vekrin fleet, their holds packed with fusion charges and antimatter warheads. The Vekrin opened fire, but Dae-jung flew like he'd never flown before, dodging and weaving through the storm of weapons fire. At the last second, he locked his controls and activated the self-destruct sequence. Then he closed his eyes and thought about the children playing in New Seosan's parks, the families he'd helped evacuate, the people who might live because he died. The explosion was visible from orbit, a miniature sun that consumed 2 Vekrin capital ships and damaged 5 others. The Western continent's defenses held. In the council chamber, Ambassador Su-min played the recording of Dae-jung's sacrifice. The chamber went completely silent as delegates watched a young human fly to his death to protect civilians. "This is what you created," Su-min said, her voice breaking. "Young people dying because you were too afraid to fight. We didn't ask for this war. We followed your rules, and you left us to die alone." A delegate from the peaceful Hanari species stood, tears running down her face. "I move to suspend the Treaty of Silent Worlds and mobilize a joint defense force." Another delegate stood, then another. Within minutes, 2/3 of the council was standing, pledging ships and soldiers to the fight against the Vekrin. High Chancellor Morvex watched this happen with something like sadness. "You understand what this means? Once we mobilize, there's no going back. We become warriors again instead of philosophers. Better warriors who protect each other than philosophers who watch genocide," Su-min replied. The vote was called. The Treaty of Silent Worlds was suspended. A joint fleet of 37 species began assembling, the largest military force in 800 years. On Earth, the government debated whether to accept the Council's help or stand alone. Admiral Young-soo argued for cooperation. "We've shown them we won't hide anymore," he said. "Now let's show them we can work together. The Vekrin threaten everyone. We fight them together or we die separately." The decision was made. Earth would lead the joint fleet, bringing together species that had never fought side by side before. Back on New Seosan, Captain Hyunwoo received a message from the Council. He was offered a full pardon for breaking the treaty. He deleted it without responding. "I don't want their pardon," he told GA. "I want their help. And I want them to remember that laws mean nothing if we won't protect each other." Engineer Tae-hyun's innovations were being copied by council militaries across the galaxy. His weaponized infrastructure, his improvised defenses, his creative use of civilian technology. It was changing how everyone thought about warfare. Young Mira, recovering in a medical tent, watched ships from dozens of species arrive in orbit. "We did it," she whispered to GA. "We made them care." "No, sweetie," Gia replied, holding her hand. "We made them remember they're supposed to care. There's a difference." The joint fleet prepared for the largest battle in galactic history. The Vekrin had numbers and ancient weapons, but they faced something they'd never encountered before, a united galaxy that had learned from humanity that some things are worth fighting for, no matter what the laws say. The combined fleet assembled near New Seosan was the largest gathering of military power the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from 37 different species, each with their own weapons and tactics, all under a single command structure. Admiral Young-soo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. "Final count is 7,412 warships," his tactical officer reported. "Plus support vessels, medical ships, and supply carriers against 10,000 Vekrin." The odds were still against them, but at least they weren't alone anymore. Captain Hyunwoo insisted on joining the final assault, despite his injuries and exhaustion. The council had sent Inquisitor Cal Seth to formally arrest him, but when the crystalline enforcer arrived on New Siosan, he found himself surrounded by human marines who made it very clear what would happen if he tried to take their captain. "The council offers you a full pardon," Cal Seth said stiffly, "for breaking the treaty." "I don't accept," Hyunwoo replied. "I'm not sorry for what I did. I'd do it again tomorrow if my people needed me." Cal Seth actually seemed to respect that. "Then perhaps the treaty needed to be broken. I will inform the council that you are essential to the war effort and cannot be spared for trial." The Vecran main fleet waited near the core worlds, vast and terrible. Their ships had been sleeping in dark space for 8 centuries, and they'd spent that time building weapons and hatred. When they'd returned to the galaxy, they'd expected to find the same fearful species that had barely driven them away last time. Instead, they found a united front, led by the one species in the galaxy that seemed incapable of accepting defeat. General Bo-Ra led the Marine forces, 30,000 soldiers from Earth and another 50,000 from allied species. They trained together on the journey to the core worlds, learning each other's strengths and weaknesses. "Humans are crazy," a Hanari soldier told his commander. "They run toward gunfire instead of away from it." "Then we'll run with them," the commander replied. "And maybe their craziness will keep us alive." The battle began at the edge of the Korval system, home to one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. The Vecran had chosen it deliberately, knowing the council would be forced to defend it. Admiral Young-Soo divided the combined fleet into 3 groups. The first would engage the Vecran head-on, drawing their fire. The second would flank from above and below, using the system's asteroid field for cover. The third, led by Captain Yoon-Ji's stealth ships, would go straight for the Vecran command vessels. "All ships, this is Admiral Young-Soo," he broadcast. "We fight today not just for survival, but for the kind of galaxy we want to live in. One where we protect each other. One where calling for help isn't a crime. One where no species faces extinction alone. Make it count." The fleets crashed together like waves of metal and fire. The Vecran focused their initial assault on the human ships, still viewing them as the primary threat. They learned too late that humans weren't the only species willing to fight desperately for survival. A group of Telkin cruisers, whose corporate mining operation had been spared during the New Siosan attack, now fought alongside humans with a fury born of guilt. They'd watched the colony burn while staying neutral. They wouldn't make that mistake again. On the Vecran flagship, General Bo-Ra led a boarding party through breached hull sections. The fighting was close and brutal, species against species in corridors too narrow for modern warfare, but the Marines had trained for this, had studied every scenario. "Push forward!" Bo-Ra shouted, her armor taking hits that would have killed her without it. "Find their command center!" They fought for 3 hours through the massive ship, losing soldiers with every meter gained. Finally, they reached the central chamber and found something unexpected. The Vecran weren't individuals. They were a hive mind, billions of bodies controlled by a single consciousness spread across their entire fleet. And that consciousness was ancient, programmed with one simple directive: eliminate chaos species, species that didn't follow patterns, that created unpredictable change, that threatened the ordered universe the Vecran had been designed to protect, species like humans. Dr. Jia, monitoring from New Siosan, analyzed the biological data Bo-Ra's team was sending. They're not evil, she realized. They're following programming that's 800 years old. They're a weapon someone built and then lost control of. She worked with alien scientists through the quantum network, developing a targeted virus that could disrupt the Vecran neural network without killing them. But it required getting close to the queenship, the central node of the hive mind. Engineer Tae Hyun volunteered immediately. I can pilot a stealth ship close enough to deploy it. I built half the systems on those ships anyway. It's a one-way trip, G.A. warned. The Vecran defenses will destroy you before you can escape. Then I'll make sure the payload gets through first, Tae-hyun replied. But Captain Hyun-woo had another idea. What if we don't try to kill them? What if we try to free them? It was a crazy human idea, one that made no tactical sense. The Vecran had killed hundreds of thousands, had tried to commit genocide, but Hyun-woo remembered what Dr. Jia had said about them being a lost weapon. If they could reprogram instead of destroy, maybe some good could come from all this death. Admiral Young-soo approved the plan, much to the confusion of the council species. We're already doing the impossible by fighting together, he said. Let's do one more impossible thing. Let's show mercy. The assault on the Queen ship was coordinated perfectly. Human fighters drew the Vecran defenses away, while Captain Yoonji's stealth vessels slipped through the chaos. They deployed the virus directly into the Queen ship's organic hull, and within minutes, the effects became visible. Across the entire Vecran fleet, ships began to slow down, weapons powering down. The hive mind was fragmenting, individual Vecran waking up from centuries of programmed sleep. General Bo-Ra stood in the command center of the flagship, watching as the Vecran around her stopped fighting and seemed to wake up. One of them looked at her with something like confusion and spoke in a language the translator took a moment to process. What have we done? The fighting stopped across all 3 star systems. The combined fleet held their fire, waiting to see what the Vecran would do. For long, tense minutes, nothing happened. Then the Vecran Queen ship transmitted a message. We remember now. We were created to fight chaos, to bring order. But we forgot why order mattered. We forgot that life itself is chaotic, beautiful, unpredictable. The species that created us died 800 years ago. We've been following dead orders ever since. High Chancellor Morvex spoke for the Council. What will you do now? We surrender, the Vecran Queen said. We will face judgment for what we've done, and we will try to rebuild what we destroyed. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. On Nuseo-san, the survivors gathered for a memorial service. 153,000 humans had died, thousands more from allied species. Lieutenant Dai Jung's name was carved in stone alongside all the others. Young Mira, walking on new prosthetic legs that alien doctors had provided, laid a flower at the memorial. They came for us, she said to anyone who would listen, all of them. We weren't alone. Ambassador Su-min was elected as the youngest High Chancellor in Council history, tasked with rewriting the laws that had failed so badly. The Treaty of Silent Worlds was replaced with the Compact of Unified Response, allowing species to defend each other without fear of punishment. Captain Hyun-woo was appointed the first Human Council General in charge of reforming galactic defense. He accepted on one condition, that the Vecran survivors would be given a chance at rehabilitation instead of execution. They were prisoners of their own programming, he argued. If we can show them a better way, maybe we can prevent this from happening again. Dr. G.A. led the rehabilitation efforts, working with Vecran who were trying to understand what they'd done while controlled by the hive mind. It was difficult, painful work, but it mattered. Engineer Tae-hyun's innovations became standard across council militaries. His creative approach to defense, his willingness to use anything as a weapon, changed how the galaxy thought about survival. Admiral Young-soo returned to Earth as a hero, but he didn't feel like one. He'd saved Nuseo-san, but at the cost of revealing Earth's location. Now humanity would have to defend their homeworld openly instead of hiding. Let them come, he told reporters. We'll show them the same thing we showed the Vecran. Earth doesn't back down. A year after the battle, Hyun-woo stood on Nuseo-san's rebuilt surface. The colony had grown, incorporating refugees from a dozen species who wanted to live somewhere that valued courage over caution. Children played in the parks again, human and alien together. He thought about the choice he'd made, sending that forbidden signal to Earth. It had cost him everything he thought mattered: his career, his reputation, his peace of mind. But it had saved his people and changed the galaxy forever. The quantum relay in his office beeped with an incoming message. It was from his sister on Earth, someone he hadn't spoken to in years. "I heard what you did," she wrote, "breaking the law to save lives. Dad would have been proud. I know I am." Hyunwoo smiled. The galaxy knew where Earth was now. They knew humans wouldn't hide anymore, wouldn't die quietly, wouldn't accept laws that let people suffer. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what the galaxy needed to learn.